Hello viewers, I trust this note finds you well. Australia's property market. Much has been said, much has been written. What's my take? Come along with me on CoffeeChillTV and like, share and subscribe if you're feeling the vibe. Much appreciated. And folks, to give you a time and location marker for today's socioeconomic philosophic chit chat on CoffeeChillTV, we are at one of the most tightly held pockets of real estate, not just on the Sunshine Coast, but in all of southeast Queensland. I'm talking Shelly Beach. Yeah, a little bit off the beaten path here, guys, and yeah, a tightly held area, low turnover. Last time I looked anyway, of real estate in this area. So I think it's quite a nice location to be talking about Australia's property market. And you know, it's probably around about 9 a.m. It's low 20s. It's a little bit fresh this morning. It's a little bit gusty. Yeah, let's unpack you know, the great after dinner conversation talking point. Well, at many after dinner parties, many after dinner conversations at parties and dinners in Australia, property. Let's get into it. And so folks, what was my inspiration for making today's video? Well, I've been mulling and stewing, calibrating this one for a while. And I would say that yesterday, lunchtime, I was watching Sky News, I was having brunch, and I saw the announcement that a deal had been done in Canberra between the Labor Party and the Greens to expand recent changes to property investment in Australia. Let me explain that a little bit further. So folks, I'm filming this at the end of June 2026, and in the middle of May 2026 we had the federal budget and massive changes to property investment in Australia. I'll backfill this video with some extra notes on that. To cut a long story short, changes were made to gearing, borrowing for property, claiming losses as tax deductions, and capital gains tax on the way out. And it's caused an uproar, a significant uproar. And look, you know, full disclosure, I'm a landlord. That helps give me a bit of street credibility. I've been a landlord for decades, plural, and I was directly impacted by the changes. But I'm not going to make this about me today. I want to just kind of keep it, you know, above the line. Yeah, suffice to say, you know, the boat was rocked when those initial changes were announced. But there was a couple of exemptions. So from budget night, you know, you couldn't gear into established properties, but there was an exemption for superannuation funds, self-managed super funds, and you know, the big public offer retail funds, the government funds. Also, you could gear into new properties. It was announced yesterday that an alliance deal had been done, and the big super funds, okay, the big retail funds, industry funds, government funds in Australia, they could continue to gear into property, but yeah, self-managed super funds, yeah, they're sort of being sort of pushed out. What does that actually mean? Here's my take. Okay, so folks, I don't want to get into, you know, party political discussions. Okay, I want to keep it above the line. I just want to talk about the consequences, and I want to talk about the fact that, you know, I think some old school vernacular is coming back into circulation as a result of these changes, not just in Australia, but in other parts of the world. Let me expand. So folks, I watched a video the other day. I'm going to try to find some information and backfill this video. But the chap was talking about landlordism. Now, landlordism, according to this video, was kind of, you know, the big corporates, the big mutuals, the big superannuation funds, build to rent. So, you know, your BlackRocks, okay, in the US of A. Also, this is happening in Europe, Central Europe as well. And in Australia, you know, the big superannuation funds building to rent. So, you know, the big managed fund, the big super fund builds a big block of 50 units, and they're the landlord. Okay, none of those houses are for sale. They are built to rent. And in this video, you know, the guy sort of unpacked that, and it got me thinking about feudal landlords, indentured, impoverished peasants. You know, learn about that in school. You know, the landlord system, the feudal landlord system. And it made me wonder, here in Australia and in other parts of the world, is it back to the future? Are we returning to feudalism? So when I was in school, I learned about feudal landlords controlling peasants when I was in primary school, and you know, they used, you know, the examples. I think they're primarily in Europe and the UK, but you know, east, west, north, south. Feudalism has been around since time immemorial, and it's still around today. I would speculate, and what I'm concerned about is, are we going to see more of the old-fashioned feudal landlord system? These days it's going to be, you know, sexied up with superannuation funds, build-to-rent schemes, corporate landlords, housing commission. But yeah, in my opinion, it's potentially heading that way, guys, where, you know, starting out with big block apartments and then whole residential blocks, maybe a whole postcode has, you know, one or two landlords. They could be big investment managers, they could be property barons who have a multiplicity of properties, but what about you know, mum and dad investors? Let's talk about them. So in Australia, you know, historically, there's been government housing, you know, the safety net, housing commission, And by and large, most of the private rental properties in Australia were owned by private individual landlords and managed by, local real estate agents, property managers. What's the future look like? Well, I've seen stories from Europe and North America where, big fund managers have just kind of bulk purchased houses, built units and houses, and the individual landlord, mum and dad, the individual, the local real estate property manager has been replaced by a salaried employee who is working for, a big property manager. There's pros and cons, guys, but what is it going to look like? What I think it may end up looking like is, fewer and fewer people who, maybe they own their own house, they don't want to be dependent on a government pension in retirement, or they want to leave a legacy and estate for their kids, and they buy just one rental property. And the last time I looked online, that's the case for, small fry landlords, just one rental property. And, using a local real estate agent who knows the market, can hopefully balance the needs and desires and wants of landlords and tenants. And it's a decentralised system of supply of rental properties. From budget night in Australia 2026, it was announced that if you are one of those private investors and you want to buy an established property and rent it out, well, the tax benefits of negative gearing don't apply. Now, you can get a new build, that's a whole other discussion which I may get into in a future video, but you can't buy the established house, rent it out and claim back those gearing tax benefits. You may be able to carry forward losses in the future when you sell it. And talking about selling it, and there was a tax change made to capital gains tax where, into the future, if you have an investment property, you may very well pay more tax. It depends on price growth. That's not guaranteed, and a few other factors. And go and talk to your accountant and read my disclaimer and waiver. I'm not here to give personalised advice in any shape or form, but those changes have had an impact according to the media I've been scanning the last few weeks. And I think I'm worried that there could be a concentration of landlords, and these could be retail super funds, managed funds, investment managers, and the proverbial multi-property landlord. But the mum and pop investor who has one or two little rental properties, I'm worried that those types of investors could be getting squeezed out by the new corporate landlords, and the big time individual property barons. And it also leads to some other discussions. And the discussion of the economics has kind of dovetailed into a little bit of sociology. For a number of years in Australia, it seems to me that landlords, the proverbial greedy landlord, has been a bit of a political football in this country, right or wrong. I'm not here to pontificate, and full disclosure, at the time of making this video, I am still a landlord, so I've got a bit of a conflict of interest. So full disclosure there. And that's led to, in my observation, a little bit of intergenerational warfare. A lot of people are saying, these greedy, lucky, selfish landlords and Generation X's, it's about time they got their comeuppance. Well, let's talk about that. So if we're talking about, comeuppance, and people use expressions like okay boomer, greedy landlord, slumlord, okay. Look, when I bought my first house in Australia, that's going way back to the late 1990s, the multiple of my salary as relates to the purchase price of the property, maybe it was several times my salary. Today, property values are such, and in a place like Shelly Beach, the average Australian on the average salary would need quadruple their salary average to purchase a property in Shelly Beach. That wasn't the case here in the 1990s. It really wasn't the case anywhere other than in the real high luxury areas. The average house required several times the average salary in the 90s to purchase a property. Today, it's a lot more. So I have some sympathy for young people trying to enter the home market. It's a big challenge in terms of that multiple of salary as relates to average purchase price as relates to average wages. It's a big challenge. But looking back to when I bought my first house, and I paid it off really quickly as well, I said no to a lot of things. I wasn't going out to, funky beachside cafes, and there are many here on the Sunshine Coast, for that smashed avocado, focaccia, eggs Benedict, balsamic drizzle, extra large chai latte. I wasn't going out and having that every day. I said no to a lot of things. I didn't go on holidays several times a year. I said no to a lot of things, and instead I just smashed that mortgage, And these days people are struggling to get deposits, and once again I sympathise. That multiple of salary, it's a big challenge. But there are probably some people who complain about not being able to save up for a home loan deposit, and maybe they would be well served with delaying gratification. Maybe you don't need 4 trips to Bali every year. Maybe you don't need to go out for breakfast every day. At the risk of sounding a little bit kind of, mother hen-ish, maybe you need to sort of just have a bit of a look at your spending circle as well. And if I think about the generation before me, the baby boomers, they had extraordinarily high interest rates. And once again, the purchase price of the property was low as a multiple of salary compared to today, but the interest rates, wow. Who remembers the recession we had to have? Double-digit interest rates. So, the good old days, they weren't perfect either. There were challenges. So what's the solution? Well, that's what we pay people in Canberra. We also pay them at state and local level as well. We elect them to come up with solutions. But, in Australia, we've had for several years a rental squeeze. In a lot of the major cities, around 1% vacancy factor. A landlord's market. Are these changes going to make it a renter's market versus a landlord's market? I'm not sure. Will it open the door for some first home buyers? Probably. But will renters be collateral damage? I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. But, if you've got a rental squeeze, and you are bringing in a record number of folks into a city, into a location, into a country, when you have a really tight rental market, those folks, they need to live somewhere. Even if they're eventually going to become homeowners, they're going to live somewhere in the short term. And, economics 101, scarcity. Even with the tax changes, I wonder, is there going to be any relief for renters? We'll see. And what does the future look like? I don't have a crystal ball. My glass is half full. I try to be optimistic. I like to think that these changes will work themselves out in the long term. Things will normalise, stabilise, but certainly it's a tumultuous time right now. I'm hoping that if I come back and do a video like this 5 years from now, we still have a bountiful private landlord investor ownership section in the Australian economy. I don't want everybody to be a corporate landlord. Okay, and I hope that's the way it's going to be in the future, but who knows? Let's see. Voila. What about you viewers? Your crystal ball. And it doesn't have to be Australia. It could be wherever you are in the world today. What does it look like? Landlords market, renters market, investors market. What types of investors? Mum and dad, private investors, big conglomerates. Where's it heading? Don't be afraid to opine in the comment section. Keep it positive, keep it classy. And hey, thank you for watching Coffee Chill TV. We'll see you in the next one. All the best.